writing books. This is the best series. I love this series. I'd like to write for this series. The Art of Time in Fiction. I read this shortly before I wrote my essay, The Speed of Grass, The Speed of Us, that describes 1/60th of 1 second and all that happens within it, the amount of time it takes to take a digital photo. I read it on one previous video when I came across the journal it was in. I was like, how short could a memoir be, you know? And what questions would that invite? But I'm sure reading this book and just thinking about scope really helped me. I've read this book a couple times. You know what's a good genre that deals with scope is sci-fi. Like the best extreme sci-fi stories, they might take millions of years. Like For a Breath I Tarry by Roger Zelazny, or The Eden Cycle by William Z. Galoon. I love stories like that. The Art of Subtext, I read this too. Oh, I do like Tim Heidecker's quote, I know writers that use subtext and they're all cowards. Love Tim Heidecker. On Cinema at the Cinema is one of the most genius works of art of our time. The Art of Series, what a great series. I give a shout out to the whole series in my recommended reading section of my writing handbook. Good rules for good writing. The Art of Recklessness. Yeah, it's a cool series, and there's a bunch more. Poetry is assertive force and contradiction. Oh, cool. Yeah, I read this, but do I remember it? Maybe I didn't read this one. This might be a newer acquisition. That's a series I'd really like to own all of, even if there's a bunch of them. I love specific reading and writing books. Study is hard work. This book is just about how to study well. That's fantastic. I used this title in my essay that was all book titles. Studying the Earth from Space, the prairie has an endless sky. I should read this sometime. I love stuff like this. I have a small library of books about this sort of thing. Dictionaries of word history. Indent, late Middle English. This was first used as a verb meaning give a zigzag outline to, divide by a zigzag line. It comes from Anglo-Norman French indenter, or medieval Latin indentare, from n, in, into, and Latin dens, dent, tooth. Words, man. I've read this one. This is good. We're really getting into this one. I mean, can you blame me? Look at this thing. Artifact. 1945. This really should be on the antique shelf, but I still use it as a reference, and it's in pretty good shape. Joseph T. Shipley. Apparently I have 2 copies of this book. This one's all marked up. I'll get rid of it. I'm going to put it on a boat, launch it out into a lake, and shoot a flaming arrow at it. You can stay. Another one of those such books. Why did we say it? The stories behind the words, expressions, and cliches we use. It's kind of a cool looking book from another era. 1985. Auld Lang Syne. It's a Scottish phrase that literally means old long since. In other words, the olden times. The song Auld Lang Syne, that usually attributed to Robert Burns, was not composed by him. He heard an old man singing it and took it down. The author and composer are wholly unknown. I hear it's one of the oldest melodies that English-speaking people still sing, along with Greensleeves. It's like a 1,000-year-old tune, maybe. I've always kind of liked it. Well, this is a book I got for the title, The Writer in the Catastrophe of Our Time. Yeah. And for, like, every other thing about it. It's Argentinian, cool. Spiritual autobiography, a passionate plea for magic, myth, and art. And for the novel. Not since Carl Jung has a major thinker written so intelligently on the importance of myth and art for the survival of mankind. Amazing. One finds a struggle everywhere between magic and science. This book looks unusual. Okay, this book looms large in my collection. I think it's so interesting. This is the only book I have that really represents distant reading in my collection. And distant reading is the most interesting lens for viewing literature. It's like, what if that book you love is just a data point in something much larger, and we're looking at larger trends in literature and what they say about people. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. Everything breaking into graphs, maps, and trees. You know, like if you ever like do one of those generated all the words featured in a work things where the most used words are the biggest and the least used are the smallest. That's a form of distant reading. that sort of word mapping. But this explains that a part of distant reading is just breaking everything into graphs, maps, and trees. And it really is fascinating. I've thought about this book so much and been like, I should reread that so I can retain more from it. And if you haven't heard of distant reading, it's a worthwhile Wikipedia page and, a few sites on the internet to check out. And this is kind of like the book for distant reading. People were talking about it on Twitter like, yeah, distant reading. Everyone knows distant reading. And I was like, I've never heard of this. And then I got into this. And yeah, really interesting. I mean, obviously you couldn't have that as your only lens to view things by, but it's a fascinating context. And it suggests all sorts of creative conceptual projects if you just think about it for more than a second. Ugh, I love books like this. A handbook for the study of poetry. Back gives us nothing. Yeah, I love books like this. I'll read this. Oh, I'm so glad I kept this. The Sins of the Fathers, Hawthorne's Psychological Themes. Hawthorne's interesting. A real American author. Grandson of a Salem witch judge. Great-grandfather of a guy I used to deliver pizzas with. I mean, I don't know why people do this sort of thing. Like, if you're going to donate books, just donate books. And if you're going to put a tag on it somewhere, put it somewhere discreetly. Look at this. Slapping that over the back. And it won't come off easy. Well, I don't know. Ego tripping at the gates of hell is what I think when I see that sort of thing. I really had to decide, do I want this? When I saw this recently in a free box. No, I bought this at Page One. Why could I not remember anything? But it was like cheap enough that it gave me pause. It's just the elements of style with occasional art of a certain style. Various art. By one artist, something like that. Illustrated by Myra Coleman. It's cool, and I'm enough of a fan, and I'm interested enough in the subject of the elements of style that I'm glad I have this. So I'm always like, why do people just do boring pictures like that? I don't know. No, that stuff's totally subjective. But I agree with this guy I used to know in Alaska. I worked at a coffee shop with him. He did all his paintings were like airbrushed images of lightning storms on Mars and things like that. He'd be all, people want to see action. No one wants to buy still lifes. And I largely agreed with him. Though everything's interesting, even still lifes. Yeah, this is fine. It's cool. I'll give it a chance. Maybe the next time I read The Elements of Style, I'll read this edition. Because yeah, I probably will end up reading it again. Hey, another book about nonfiction. I have more books on nonfiction than I thought there were on nonfiction. Tracy Kidder, that name turns up again and again. Winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Stories and advice from a lifetime of writing and editing. Good prose. I wish I had William Zinser's On Writing Well, but I don't think I do anymore. I always give that one away. That's the nonfiction how-to book I think of. That's the book that says, if a line isn't working, just cut it. That's fresh. That's from UNM's giveaway pile. I remember those red dots. And I love obscure, specific writing stuff like this, like technique and fiction. You would learn something from this and bring it to nonfiction. I probably did. I think I read this. I had some voracious years of just reading all things about writing. I wanted to know it all. Did we see another copy of this early on? I think we did. John Gardner, The Art of Fiction, Notes on Craft for Young Writers. No, it was on Becoming a Novelist. Apparently he wrote about the craft a lot. That's cool. I've always wanted to read his book Grendel about the beast from Beowulf, from the monster's perspective. I think I read this a bunch back in the day. 78 Reasons Why Your Book May Never Be Published. Rude. 14 Why It Just Might. You shut your mouth. Rude. No. Not yet. Well, I'm working on it. Sure, I took a class on it. Let your darlings live. Dare to dream. Oh, look at this beautiful, crazy artifact of a work. 100 famous novels. Look how old this is. From old school Barnes & Noble. Look at that. Back when it was a guy with a cart. $1.35. So what's your new book about? Well, I just summarized 100 other books. Cool. Mary Jane Power, what a name. 1955. Ethan Frome. Ivanhoe. David Copperfield. I bet I'd love this book. I mean, this whole book. Look at it, it's beautiful. 1955. Neat. I love that color green. What a cool looking read. True artifact of another time. Oh, this is probably the most important book about poetic meter that I own. I read this a bunch. Poetic meter and poetic form. Yeah, I spent a lot of time with this one. It's good. You know, I thought I was recording earlier a lot of stuff because this video is only like 11 minutes long, but I swear I've been talking for much longer than that. I bet it was paused for tons of it. Great. Anyway, good book. Rare, but you gotta have it. Just kidding. No one has to have anything. All you have to do is die. But it's nice to have good books. I love specific stuff about meter. This is just fun to think about. You know, poetry. Who doesn't love poetry? Even if you think you don't, you probably secretly do, inside. And another very specific writing book, autobiography. I remember grabbing this one up when I saw that title. UNM Bookstore, I think. Used, but I don't care. All right, well, it's strange this video is so short. I really think I didn't record something. Doesn't matter. One more word etymology book. What's behind the word? This one talks about how diapers began as tablecloths. What? Yes, that's what I retained from this. Oh, look at this. Old school. Computer kids, this is what it used to be like. You wanted to check out a book? This is how you did it. When I was a kid, my mom signed me up for all these sports, and I was on all this medication for a childhood seizure disorder, and it all made me kind of clumsy, and I was never very good at sports. And I was on the t-ball team. My mom had signed me up for everything just because I was 6 of 7, and she's like, get out of here. Anyway, there was this real bully on the t-ball team named Michael. Did not like that kid. Since my name was Mike, I came up with the idea to get revenge. So I went to the library and I checked out all the books that I wanted under his name, and then I just kept them. And since we were in the same class, I heard him get in big trouble and get sent all these bills. My parents are going to be so... I didn't check these out. And that's when I knew that I would become a supervillain. Still working on it. This is a beautiful book, though. And word origins are a cool topic. All right. Look at these next time. Rock and roll.